We're in the third week of May, still working on the theme of divine judgment. So the minor prophet for May is Micah. Hope you're doing a read through that. That'd be a great book just to kind of once each week make your way all the way through it. But we're also working on this theme of divine judgment, and this week you've chosen Obadiah, Jeff.
Yeah.
And that was actually our prophet for January. So
Right.
hopefully that's familiar territory for all you guys. So let's talk a little bit about why Obadiah as
Sure.
our theme text this week for
Yeah.
divine judgment.
Yeah, so Obadiah comes from the era of the Babylonian captivity. Obadiah is God's prophet, ironically, not so much about Israel as about Edom. And
Because his concern isn't just with Israel and Judah.
well, that's right. Verse 15 there, for the day of the Lord is near upon all nations. So that's exactly right. And so anyways, Jerusalem fell, and there were survivors. Some people tried to flee, and some people escaped the initial Babylonian dragnet. And so Edom helped. Edom was to the southeast there of Jerusalem, and they helped to round up some of the survivors, turn them over to the Babylonians, otherwise enslave them. But basically, they enjoyed the fall of Jerusalem. And part of it, David, is it goes back to Edom. The Edomites are the descendants of Esau.
Yeah, these are cousins.
And that's part of what God's upset about, the treachery of brother on brother, because Jacob, and this goes all the way back to Genesis when Jacob and Esau squabbled. Jacob is deceiving the birthright or the blessing away from Esau, and Esau literally wants to kill Jacob for a season. Remember all that. Literally here we are, better part of maybe 1,500 years later, and their descendants are still squabbling. And though Edom's issues have crossed the line morally, and now ironically in joining in the judgment of Jerusalem and piling on and relishing it and participating in it in ways that they weren't supposed to, they've brought judgment upon themselves.
And the thing that's interesting to me about that, so as I was reading back through this morning, I was impressed with the level of detail.
Yep.
So as you make your way through Obadiah, just notice God doesn't just say judgment's coming. God says judgment is coming, and for these reasons, you did this, you didn't do that, and just one after another, he rattles off the sins of the Edomites. And I was just impressed with the fact that all these things they did, God had seen.
Oh, yeah.
Down to the last detail. None of that had escaped his notice.
Right.
And even though it happened in the moment and it looked like they got away with it, the record is now in the mind of God.
Right.
And God is saying that there needs to be punishment for this evil that was done. And so I thought about that in our own context, because especially as the world grows more and more evil, I think disciples get more and more frustrated that people don't seem to be getting what they deserve.
Right.
That wickedness goes on. It's kind of like the Habakkuk problem. Do you see what's going on down here, God?
Right.
And why aren't you doing anything about that? And I think that's kind of the way disciples feel sometimes. And I think that's even some of what drives us to be so intense about politics. It's almost as though, since God's not doing anything, maybe I can get somebody in office that'll do something about all of this evil that I see going on around me. And so I just thought Obadiah was a great reminder that number one, God's not missing this stuff. God isn't missing this stuff going on in our culture, the evil that's happening. And number two, he's going to do something about that.
Right.
It may not be in the season that we anticipate or in a timetable that suits our desires, but none of that's escaping his notice. And God will come back and he will deal with the evil of men one way or the other.
Right. And the sad part of it is, too, is, people who do these types of things, I think they're getting away with it, literally think there will be no judgment. It will never catch up with them. The book literally starts in verses 3 and 4. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rock, who say in your heart, who will bring me down to the ground?
Right.
Because part of what happened is, they lived in a very mountainous region. It was easy to defend. And so, again, you think, And again, whether it's today,
Who's going to mess with me?
Yeah, and so whether it's today, our military technology, just all
Right.
things we always beat on, or our financial strength as a country, whatever. You think you can't fall. You finally found the totally defensible position. And God says, "I take that challenge."
That's exactly
and so
right.
there's a also a warning there to again not let your eyes be blinded by present circumstances.
Yeah, I wonder about that idea of deception too, that not only do they deceive themselves about judgment, but maybe because of the long family history, even thought that what they were doing is right. I'm not going to be judged because, listen, they were bad to us, we're bad to them. They deserve it.
Yeah, no,
And
there's a history there.
and we can deceive ourselves about things like that. I'm not going to be judged because I had a good reason for doing the things that
Well,
I did.
or just like you were talking about in our relationships in our lives yesterday in your sermon, sometimes we think that because somebody did wrong to us first, I don't have to, I can respond in kind, or at the very least, I don't have to do what's right toward them anymore because they legitimately did me wrong.
Aren't we glad Jesus isn't that way?
Well, yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, and the sad thing about this is at the end of the day, so the Babylonians, we know from history, the Babylonians will come and destroy them too, ironically. And so what you have here at the same time is really the death of two kindred countries. It's the destruction of Jacob's family and their land, and the destruction of Esau's family and their land, and all for the sin. Both. And again, you want to see we're different than them, but in God's eyes, both of these people or both of these groups had sinned, and ultimately Jacob may have been chosen, had the patriarchal promise. They were destroyed, and Esau's kin were destroyed too. At the end of the day, God will judge sin. Don't ever think you're exempt.
And so, can I just add that we need to take solace in that as we fret about the evil going on in our world, and be at peace about that, knowing that God sees it, and when the season is right, divine judgment will come, and God will deal with that. And I think that ought to help us be more at peace, as I think we're going to find in the years to come. We live in a world. I know you made me this way. A dark world that is increasingly disturbing to us, and I think that I do feel a kindred spirit with Habakkuk, wanting to know, is God going to do something? And so Obadiah is a great reminder that God sees all that, every detail, and He is certainly going to deal with that. So something to ponder as you make your way through the book of Obadiah. And again, reading through Micah as well. If you guys have any questions about that, we're happy to talk about those on the podcast, so you can pat those along. You can text us or email us, and we'd be glad to talk about that. Either way, I hope you enjoy your read for this week, and come on back next week as we wrap up the theme of divine judgment.